ihnen einen Stromschlag und ziehst ihn anschließend noch einen drüber. Links-Rechts-Kombination. Denk an den One-Two-Punch.
Ich hab's nicht so gemeint! Nein! Still! Ich hab sie nicht angefasst! Lass mich in Ruhe!
Hör zu. Ich habe Familie. Ich muss sie hier rausschaffen. Aber die Splicer haben mich von ihnen getrennt. Wenn du es bis zu ihnen schaffst nach Neptunes Bounty, dann könntest du sie vielleicht... Du meinst jetzt bestimmt, das Leben hat dir schon übel genug mitgespielt. Aber du bist meine letzte Hoffnung, meine Frau und mein Kind jemals wiederzusehen. Such Neptunes Bounty. Such meine Familie. Bitte. Die haben alles verändert. Sie haben unsere Körper und unseren Geist zerstört, weil wir nicht mit ihnen fertig werden. Gute Freunde, die sich auf einmal gegenseitig an die Gurgel gehen. Babys, die erdrosselt in ihren Kinderbetten liegen. Die ganze Stadt geht zum Teufel. Wenn du einen Splicer am Wasser siehst, verpasst ihm eins mit dem Elektrobolt.
Shit, du tust mein...
Ich bin total verspleist. Total verspleist. Ich will mich bestimmt niemand mehr.
Hey Brenda, kannst du mir mal erklären, warum seit fast 3 Wochen ein riesiges Loch in der Wand hinter deinem Scheißhaus ist? Ich heiße zwar nicht Shakespeare, aber ich versuche hier ein anständiges Theater zu führen. Die Arbeiter aus Port Neptune kommen hierher und erwarten sich ein bisschen Ablenkung und Unterhaltung. Aber sie können an nichts anderes denken als an den Gestank, der aus deiner Kloschüssel kommt. Bring das in Ordnung.
Immer mit der Ruhe. Wärst du so freundlich, die Waffe runterzunehmen? Du denkst, das da unten ist ein Kind? Lass dich nicht verarschen. Sie ist jetzt eine Little Sister. Irgendjemand hat das liebe kleine Mädchen zu einem Monster gemacht. Du musst lernen, umzudenken. Hier unten in Rapture zählt deine Vorstellung davon, was Recht oder Unrecht ist, nicht mehr. Das ist der Big Daddy. Sie sammelt das Eden und er beschützt sie dafür.
I'm Jeff Keighley here in Boston to go behind the scenes to hear some untold stories about the making of Bioshock with Ken Levine and Sean Robertson. Let's talk a bit about the theme and setting of Bioshock, Rapture. I think a lot of people, when they played the game for the first time, Ken, they wondered, how did you even dream up this place? And I know you said publicly before that part of the reason you what led you to Rapture was this idea of fully simulating a place. Tell us about that sort of idea and the frustrations you had with other games where you sort of hit a bound.
I think our philosophy was always to do what we were doing 100% rather than try to do something bigger and do it 50% or 40%. So one of the ideas of, and this sort of came from System Shock 2 as well, where you focus on an area that you can really bring to life and you kind of eliminate the questions of, well, why can't I go over the bridge to New Jersey? So we were able to really make a place, I think, that felt believable and real, even though in actuality it was really quite limited. But we just sort of dressed it with all these buildings outside that were all, basically glorified fakes. We let the story drive what we needed to show rather than some kind of like predetermined map which we set down, which is a little different than like System Shock 2, where we actually mapped a spaceship out deck by deck. Yeah. Because I don't know what the philosophy felt a little different there, because you want to feel like a real spaceship that was sort of stacked on top of each other. But Rapture was free to sprawl across the ocean floor.
Although you guys originally, Sean, were talking about doing this game on a sort of spaceship again, right?
Yeah, when we first started talking about what the spiritual successor to System Shock 2 was going to be, Spaceship came up, but again, we wanted a limited environment. We didn't necessarily want to do Spaceship again. And our first actual exploration of this space was underwater, but ultimately ended up looking like a spaceship. It just happened to have a couple of seaweed fronds outside. And that started to push us towards what artistic statement that we wanted to make this look different, and what rules we were going to set for the world. How at every turn we were going to try to remind the player that they were in fact underwater and that this wasn't a spaceship.
And how, like underwater, we obviously know you did underwater, then sitting in the sky, like where did you come with the idea of like doing this underwater?
I think there was probably a conversation. It's like, well, what kind of places could be cut off from other places? Yeah. Like, well, spaceship, summer camp, any island notion, right? Something that's cut off from the rest of the world. Yeah. So you never felt like you should be able to go over that bridge to New Jersey.
I don't want to apply some deep and meaningful conversation. I think it was one of those ideas that you just kind of say, and then everybody's, that sounds cool, let's try that. Let's go for it.
And I think it lended itself to having very nice views out the window without having to build an insane amount of unique assets.
Right.
By today's standards, we still were a small team back then. And there's an expectation that because you're underwater, the view distances are going to be short, so you can really kind of fade out into the fog at a short distance and not have the expectation that, why can't I see forever? So there's a lot of limitations in a good way that we put on ourselves by being underwater, as opposed to like if you're on a cruise ship, then you'd expect to see across the water and we'd have to deal with that. Same thing with an island.
Or in a city in the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was a lot more complicated, yeah.
So you came up with the idea of let's do this underwater, let's do this sort of isolated place. Then you had to answer the question of, why would someone build this? Is that sort of how it worked, sort of order of operations? You then had to come up with a story to explain?
Yeah, I think we wanted a very believable reason why they'd be there. Right. And sort of the necessary isolation of the place sort of led to, well, what kind of person would want to do this? And I wasn't even particularly aware of the sort of political implications of what I was reading, but I've been reading, I had read The Fountainhead. Right. By Ayn Rand, and I mostly thought it was an interesting story. Like, I didn't realize that people were sort of basing their sort of political lives around it, because I wasn't that tuned in to that stuff at that point. And